We are now live. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Public and Active Transport Committee meeting. Welcome to councillors, welcome to staff, welcome to members of the public, which we may well have some online. Good to have you all here. This is our last Public and Active Transport Committee meeting for this triennium, the 23-25 triennium. I suppose in 3 or 4 words, you'd probably say that COVID recovery has had quite a significant influence over the Public and Active Transport Committee dealings, and an item later on the agenda we will discuss achievements, etc. So that'll be good to look at that.
It's about 40 words.
People.
It's about 40 words.
Good to have you here, Gary.
Pleasure
Right,
to be of assistance.
I will start once Councillor Kelleher is settled. I will start with Karakia. Tua Kauranga, Tua Kararo, Tua Kaweho, Tua Karoto, Tua Katehia Tangata, Kauranga Tapo, Tauranga Ta'ao, Umiai, Uiai, Takia. Righty ho. We have an apology from Councillor Lloyd and Paul. Are there any other apologies? If not, I will move that we receive that apology, seconded by Councillor Councillor Weir. Sorry. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 3 is public forum. We have no requests for a public forum. So we move on to confirmation of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes, and I'll just move that we confirm the agenda as circulated, seconded by Councillor Kelleher. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving on to item 5, declaration of interest, just the standard reminder of our responsibilities when we have a conflict of interest. Moving on to item 6, presentations. There are none. Moving on to item 7, which is the confirmation of the minutes from our last meeting, which was held on the 5th of June 2025. Would someone like to move that it's true and correct? I did not. I wasn't in attendance, so I'm relying on. Thank you, Council. I'm just going to go to first names. Thank you, Alan. Moved by Alan, seconded by Elliot. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Moving on to the action register. There's just one item there that has been completed. So thank you to the staff for following that up with the what we're supposed to move board. Some messaging there. Very good. So moving on to our first item, which is 9.1, which is the Transport Operating Environment report. And welcome to staff. This report basically covers off legislative changes coming out of Wellington, plus other policy changes or things that we need to be aware of on the local scene as well. But I'll hand over to Anita to introduce her staff and any initial comments with regards to the report. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Chair. So I will let the staff speak to this report, but today we do have some new staff presenting, which is very exciting. So a very new staff member sitting to the right is Dean Lowry. So Dean's joined us from Environment Southland, where he was in both the RMA policy and the transport policy team. So he's going to be a great asset for us, especially as we move into the next cycle of RLTP. So Dean and Daniel are going to talk through this paper and we'll take any questions at the end.
Awesome. Welcome, Dean and Daniel, and to Dean. Great to have you on board, and congratulations to your rugby team winning the Ramsey Shield. So no, that's great. Awesome. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
We're in your hands. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide the committee just with a broad overview of some of the key transport matters happening locally and throughout the country. We've kept this the scope of this paper, pretty high level, just to bring matters to your attention. But should the committee wish to explore any of these matters further, we'd be happy to provide additional detail or supporting data as requested. I'll take the report as read, and just want to highlight one key point, which is the NZTA State of Public Transport in New Zealand report, which confirms that Otago is our public transport network and system functions very well on multiple metrics. And this is particularly true when compared to other similar sized regions as Waikato and Bay of Plenty. So yeah, we're happy to take any questions on the report.
Thanks very much, Daniel. That comment with regards to NZTA's conclusion, and that's obviously part of that report. So that's public knowledge that would be well known throughout the country, particularly with other passenger transport operators and providers.
Yes, there's NZTA publishes their quarterly report. It's public, and it sort of has the higher population regions and the medium ones and the smaller ones. And yeah, and the whole there's a link in the agenda, but it just shows that we perform well.
And we are making sure we share that at every opportunity as well.
Great, thank you. Questions? Yeah, Kate.
Thank you. Look, I haven't linked to it, and thank you for providing the link to that public transport report. Just checking on the reliability. So when you read the sentence here, 83.6% of the scheduled trips in Otago departed their original time, and that's low, and you get a very good reason for that. Do we measure reliability the same way throughout the country? Because is reliability about each stop, or is it about just the point at the start? Or is it?
Julian can answer this question because we talked about this just a second ago.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. He was coming up front anyway.
Hi, so we measure reliability primarily in terms of what we report on in our sort of level of service and that sort of thing as the departure from the terminus.
Mm.
So the first stop on the route. NZTA measure it in a slightly different way. We have actually created this previously, and they changed the way it was measured slightly, I think midpoint through the year. So we expect our metrics to improve in that area. In addition to us having made some timetable changes to ourselves that are quite substantive in June.
So why would your metrics improve?
Because they've modified the way that they actually measure reliability and punctuality.
Okay, so sorry. Reliability I asked about. I didn't ask about punctuality, which so it is difficulty, and yeah, they're not the same thing, which we have to be really aware of.
Yeah.
So the reliability is about the first stop, and if that's out, then all the way down can be out.
Yeah.
Where does the first the 1 minute before or the 4 minutes after or something like that, the 5 minute gap come? Is that punctuality or reliability?
So punctuality is the time sort of arrives and stops. So if it's 15 minutes late, then we consider the trip hasn't operated at all.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 5 minutes late or less, then it's not on time, but we consider the trip to have run. Yeah.
Okay. So will all people, all services be measured the same way in ongoing subsequent NZTA reports? Can we get that comparative data?
Yeah, you can, yeah. And we've also been having several discussions about how we report to council on this, because the terminus is really important. It's one that most regions, in fact most places everywhere, measure, because whilst the customer wants to see, the passenger wants to see the bus turn up, and they want it to be generally reliable across the route. The terminus is important because if it doesn't leave its start point on the trip, it ain't going to make it. And then generally, we get to the end of the route, turn around, come back again. So if it's late, then the entire day is affected. But there are, it's a high level view, whether it's us, NZTA, however you measure it, it's a high level view. What we were looking at, for example, yesterday afternoon, we're looking at if you're on a route by route basis, but then actually look at peak off peak. So you get percentiles of reliability, punctuality at between say 7 and 9 a.m, which are going to be quite different from 9 till 3. So you might have 100% of the routes running on time from 9 till 3, but it might drop to 80%.
Great for Supercom
peak. So
users,
it's
but
about
possibly not the
Yeah.
target market.
Yeah, so we spent quite a lot of time, Jack, who I think is in the room somewhere, has been doing quite a lot of analysis on how we might present this in more detail going forward. So we'll continue to report on the key Hayley leaving the terminus, but also there's we have a 1,000 bus stops, we have buses pinging data every 10 seconds. It's millions of sets of data per day, and there's a way of sort of collating that into something a bit more.
Thanks, Julian. That's really great. I'm going to go back to my original question. Just check. Do NZTA have a set data though that they will have that's going to be the same comparatively? And your answer was yes to that, because that's also really important for us to compare ourselves to operations.
Yeah, so our data can be directly comparable to NZTA's data.
And Auckland on it. Yeah, great.
Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, so going to page the 21, which is around heavy electric vehicles being off the road charges 1st of July. So what sums have we done to see what that effect will be on bus fares, and what is the cost benefit at the moment between an electric bus and a diesel bus, and is that being reflected in our contracts?
Sorry, I'll answer that. I'm just getting to the page.
Your paragraph 21 is a
Paragraph 21,
Paragraph
page 10,
21,
sorry.
not page 21. Sorry. Let's go back. Yeah, so Nick and I have had an initial discussion about this. So they come in obviously 2027. One of the things we just need to do is work out what's in our contract, because we're already paying road users charges for diesel buses, so we don't know that there'll be an additional cost burden. But it is an action point on my whiteboard to follow up to understand the cost implications. So it's not a piece of work we've done yet, but we are already paying RUCs for diesel buses. So we're not sure what the cost difference will be, but we are very aware that we need to look and come back to council and let you know.
Right, and so part of the benefit, apart from emissions with electric buses, is the cost of the fuel. So one would assume, and I'm probably testing whether my assumption is right or not, one would assume that if the road users' charges are the same, there should be some benefit to bus users in that electric buses will be cheaper to run than diesel buses.
I think that's a fair assumption. And as our contracts move to phasing out diesel and into electric, we should start seeing those prices reflected in the tenders that we get through for the new units.
And when would the first test of that be?
So sorry, just having a sidebar.
Yeah, no, there's no trouble.
We've got unit 1 and 2 out for tender now, and Julian's just said that we're building in a process to understand the impact of the RUCs through that process, which will transition into electric. So soon is the answer.
Yeah. So and going down to 24, this last bullet point on fares, we're a good 30% at least below the average national fare. Have we done any sums on, had we increased to being average, which is it's always better to be better than average, but average is pretty damn good. What effect that would have on our 5 million trips? My quick, it would be an extra $3 million into our coffers, which would seem our buses would run correctly. But have we done any work on that to see how that looks?
So the work that we've done is the modelling that we did in terms of the RPTP and fare setting, and understanding where that point is between maximising fare price and not impacting patronage, which is where we got to the $2.50 fare. That's the
Yeah, but it's the average, isn't it? So that's an average over New Zealand, which is $2. So that takes in all fares. Yeah, I'll just say that that's information that I've never, unless I've missed it somewhere, that as an argument to setting our fares, if we are in fact well below average. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
The challenge with that is it also includes things like Tuia, which is the train from Hamilton to Auckland, which is obviously
Right.
top end.
Yeah.
And so our fare is the highest average fare per kilometre after Auckland.
Yeah,
So
well,
while
we
we
should,
might be below average, we are charging what we probably consider reasonable. If I don't know what the impact will be to increasing to $2.50 in terms of what that does against the average, because obviously there's a whole lot of concessions and things that change the fare profile.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's quite a good diagram in that NZTA link, Kevin, when you get some time, that sets out all those fare comparisons, because that average figure is certainly skewed by the large PT providers with those significant networks through Auckland and Wellington. But it's the data they're starting to provide gives us some good insights.
Thank you.
I had one question, and just jumping back to what Kate was talking about for two questions as well. I'm just wondering if you're able to translate the figures we've got here through that NZTA report to our LTP levels of service. Because it seems like am I correct in assuming the cancellations figure is sort of analogous to our reliability figure in the LTP measurements, and that the reliability figure there, that's a different measurement to our reliability and our LTP level of service, where we had that 99.7% reliability.
Yeah, so what we would call there's some phrasing differences. What we would call or what we would call reliability is the services actually operating. Right. So if 99 out of 100 trips run full stop, that's 99% reliability. Whereas we have punctuality is as per NZTA, the bus is actually departing and turning up at their destination on time. And cancellations is just the number of trips that didn't run.
Yeah. And our punctuality measure is slightly different. That's
I think ours is our target is 95%, I think. So
in terms of what we're actually measuring though.
Sorry?
In terms of what we're actually measuring though, is it a different measurement?
No, it's the as far as I recall, it's the same thing.
That is
so it's fairly ambitious, but it is achievable. It's common with other regions or elsewhere in the world as well.
So do we have any data on sort of the punctuality in terms of the stops along the route rather than the destination?
We do. So it's part of the we have a huge amount of data actually getting into is and how we present it is the challenge. But yeah, we invested in a system a couple of years ago to replace our previous real-time provider, and that core data serves everything. So you can some of the ways we might present it is you can look at a route at a month level, and you can look at in a grid and traffic light it, so you can go, okay, so kind of easy way to see, but at this point of the day, it's running on time, or batch of stops. So we look at that data and go, okay, at a high level, is it the operator at fault? Is it us? Is it our timetables? Because that could, of course, is it traffic? Is it something else? Diversions. And then do we need to make some adjustments to the timetables? Do we need to actually go to the operator and go, hey, this is poor performance. This is something that you're doing wrong. And but also, above all this is often it's that difference between performance and things that are out of the operator or our control. But broadly, passengers expect the buses to turn up on time. So it's looking at that at a route level. Are they operating functioning? If you look at 95%, that's 19 out of 20 trips turning up on time. Or if you look at it as reliability, which I think is a similar measure, 19 out of 20 trips turn up on time. So it's that passenger experience. People will generally accept the odd trip doesn't turn up, some are late, but it's broadly across the network. We want to get to that target.
as that's work that we're doing at the moment to
Yeah.
sort of do that analysis. Yeah. And I just have one more, it's just around separate from that, but in terms of the national environment, if we had any updates from the Motu Move program?
Yes, we have. So the team leading that work is just working through some challenges that they've come up with, and they're looking to reforecast the program. So we still haven't necessarily got when we might roll out, but we are working with them, and we've got multiple points of contact with them.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, someone not move that this report be noted. Elliot, see Gary, Elliot, would you like to speak to your motion? Gary,
Actually, I will.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's very generous of you. Thank you. Look, it's a good report. For me, what it did highlight is the comment under the draft National Infrastructure Plan. And there's a core comment in there that is, I think, would resonate across the country, and it's around value for money for infrastructure projects within New Zealand, that we don't get good value for money for our infrastructure projects. In Otago, where we are geographically one of really the third largest of the regions across New Zealand, then we live with the outcome of sharing the investment in roading across the country. And yet, because of our population, because of our location, we are, I guess, behind the thinking, because the focus is on Auckland and Wellington and the more denser populated areas. So when we look at the necessity for bridges, the necessity for roading improvements, and then our transport systems have to live with what we have. And so as a country, it really concerns me, and certainly for our region, we have to find a way to get better value for money for the infrastructure projects that we may be lucky enough to have. And the necessity ones I think of are the likes of the Shotover Bridge, 4-laning, widening roads to get where the traffic density is high. Our public transport system has to live with what is there currently, and that is a challenge. So for me, that was a very important point that was raised in this report, and I just was keen to highlight it. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I wonder whether the chair of the Regional Transport Committee would like to make any comment in terms of what Gary has just alluded to.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think the problem in the South Island generally is a lower population, and we're not heard in Wellington or wherever the MPs are in that make their decisions. Not sure that it's Wellington anymore either. And that is why we've collectively worked together, and I think there's an absolute, in fact, I've been emailing staff about how we could be doing this in a similar way in the whole of our work streams, where we go to a South Island, or at least Otago, South Island and Canterbury, get those pipelines of infrastructure or work programs and work collectively together better. If we're not doing that, we will not be heard by the people making the decisions. And the only way of getting infrastructure and investment down here is to have a much louder voice. And I'm been really thrilled with the way that we've worked collectively. It's been great to have Alexa on board at the South Island level and having those conversations both with ministers and people like the Infrastructure Commission. Way to go, as far as I can see. And that could be a whole of our planning work as well.
Thank you for those comments. If there's not any other speakers, I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to acknowledge Kate and Alexa's involvement and leadership with the Regional Transport Committee, Otago Southland Regional Transport Committee. Chair Kate and Deputy Chair Alexa beaver away in that role, and it plays a really, really important role, as the discussion has just alluded to, making sure that we get our slice of the cake when it comes to capital and improvements and maintenance improvements, etc. And getting that slice of the cake out of Wellington. So yeah, a louder voice. I hear what you're saying. Thank you. Are there any further speakers?
Oh, Thank you. I don't want to have a double dip this. I had to say that it wouldn't happen, Get Louder Voice, without the combined work of the staff. And they've been absolutely brilliant. Our staff and working, we've been working with them for some time, because working Southland as well, but also ECAN and bringing all of the West Coast and Tasman, Marlborough into that same story. It's been fantastic joined up effort. And Alex,
Well said, I failed.
yeah, no, that's
I like
fine.
that. No, beautifully put. Alexa.
Yeah, I might just add something quickly to that, and that is that I'd really like to see that group continue on into the future. And one of the real beauties of it was the ability to understand each other's issues, because they're all quite different. And to be able to actually understand those differences between each areas, the difference between providing, thinking about transport between Cromwell and Queenstown, and then again looking at the resilience of the Ashburton Bridge, and to be able to bring that together, and the issues that West Coast have, Knights Point, for example, and starting to actually think together as one voice, accepting each other's issues and being willing to talk as one collective voice. And I feel like a next step there would be to work together in the same way as we do with integrated catchments, and that is to collectively prioritize the things that we want money spent on. And I think that sort of planning could be done. Again, I acknowledge the work of staff. They've been so helpful with this, and bringing KiwiRail in has been really good too. So yeah, that's all. But I've really enjoyed that collective approach there. Thanks.
Thanks, Alexa. Kevin.
Yeah, I think there's a point being missed, and I just want to refer again to what Councillor Kelleher said. And if we note clause 10, which notes that we spent more on infrastructure than any other OECD country in the 2010s, but the quality of our infrastructure doesn't measure up to our spend. And I think and Councillor Kelleher can correct me if he wishes, but I think what we're saying there is plenty of money being spent, but we actually aren't getting value for money. And so we need to drastically need to change our acceptance of the process that we are currently using. And that needs to be overhauled. So every ratepayer and taxpayer piece of money that gets put into a bin actually gets spent in a correct manner. And that is, to me, is the real issue of this statement. And we're internationally pointed out as being very poor at doing it. So there's plenty of money, but we're not spending it correctly.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'm just going to, if not, I'll go back to Elliot for a reply if you wish.
Look, totally agree with the other speakers that we're not seeing enough investment per capita down the South Island compared to other areas of the country. But just to come back to the report, just want to thank staff for their work there, and especially dive into that NZTA report. I think it highlights a few key things. Firstly, that it is pretty hard to compare networks across the country, especially when you look at how we might have a lower average fare, but then the highest average fare per kilometre. Really good example of the differences between the networks that we have to work with when we are looking at stats like that. But it'll also be really, really good to look at the network reliability and punctuality data to figure out those pressure points, so that we can actually figure out what steps are sort of most urgent to actually improving those stats. As Julian said, is it our timetables, or is it the operators, is it roadworks, is it something else, but also is it specific routes or specific times of the day or specific stops that are most problematic. I think having those questions answered will be a really good step towards us actually improving our reliability and punctuality. So really great to hear that work's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Elliot. I'll put the motion that we note the report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Moving on to item 9.2, the Queenstown Limited meeting 24-25 full year network performance report. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the performance of the public transport across areas total mobility for the full 12 months of the 24-25 financial year.
the slightly more familiar faces with this one, obviously Julia, Gemma and Laura will speak to this report.
Well,
Thank
welcome to the table, Laura and Gemma. We're in your hands. Julian, excuse me.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the full year review of bus ferry and total mobility. And yeah, I'll leave it to our senior analyst, Gemma Wilson, to talk to you about it. It's been a reasonably strong year in terms of performance. And Laura's here if there's any questions on total mobility.
Excellent. Thank you, Julian. Gemma, we're in your hands.
Thank you. So this full year report continues the previous financial year's strong performance, with Dunedin boardings up 3% and Queenstown up 4%. The growth in patronage is building on really strong growth from the previous financial year. Dunedin boardings have plateaued slightly the past couple of months, but we did achieve record growth in 8 months over the year, where patronage exceeded the previous financial year. Meanwhile, in Queenstown, the patronage growth continues to be really strong, with all quarters above the previous financial year and record growth in 10 of the 12 months of the year. Revenue for the full year in Dunedin was down 8%, while in Queenstown it declined by 4%, but we're hoping for these figures to decrease this financial year now that we're comparing the same concession types to the previous financial year. Ferry patronage remains down by 4% compared to the previous year, and revenue is also down by 1%.
Thank you, Gemma.
So happy to take any questions.
Cool. If I was an accountant, I would say this is a really solid performance. But we continue on that trajectory of increased patronage. You know, I think we've climbed out of COVID, but it's starting to get some good solid growth. Sure, revenue. You know, you can always look at the negatives, but at the end of the day, the revenue will probably look after itself, providing the patronage continues to head in the north direction. Questions? Tim.
I am an accountant. And, I would just like to ask, we've seen performance activities for public transport in Dunedin that show a deficit. So how are we seeing a deficit when we're seeing record patronage?
So there's a couple of things you'll recall through annual plan conversations. There were some aspects of our Dunedin network that weren't funded that we've now corrected going forward. But also the reduction in revenue is primarily because of the reduction in NZTA grant claim. So that's Gemma's point that going forward we should start to see actually revenue going up because we're now comparing apples
With fare increases?
With
fare increases?
And then we'll see what happens with fare increases. So we're optimistic that July, August, September should be green rather than red. And then we'll see what happens from the end of September when we increase fares.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Can you just explain that a wee bit greater? And I'll just try to clarify that I've got that right. So you're saying we have funded some things that we thought NZTA would have funded, so we've funded them, and now that funding's coming through. So is that what you're saying there?
Not quite. So when we did the variations for the Mosgiel routes, so to introduce the express routes, so we had this discussion through annual plan. It wasn't picked up in the budget for the last financial year. So we got NZTA funding for it, but we didn't rate fund for it. So it just meant we had a shortfall, but it's been corrected in the annual plan. We do get NZTA co-funding for it, and we are rating correctly for it now.
So how is that relevant to fare revenue though?
It's not relevant to fare revenue, but it's relevant to, well, actually that's a private share, because we weren't fully rating for the cost of our OPEX. Sorry, you're right, that doesn't relate to fare revenue.
There's two different things.
Yes.
That was relevant to Tim's question on why were we showing a deficit in the last financial year, which we did, and that was because through all of the work that's been doing to clarify the contractual commitments, we picked up that Mosgiel route. Separate issue to the fare revenue, which is largely due to the loss of NZTA subsidy, which occurred partway through the war.
Yes.
So they're two different things.
So have we done a calculation that had we been getting the right amount where that figure should have been?
So it's not a case of not getting the right amount. We continue to receive if we talk about we talk about fares here.
Yep.
So the estimation of fare revenue when we budget is only that.
Yes.
It's an estimate. So obviously when we go through our budgeting process, we've got a huge amount of data that we can rely on to put those estimates into the system. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it will be driven by what sort of patronage we get through the doors. So we know that there was a drop off in our revenue post the removal of those additional NZTA subsidies. But as the team said, now we're a year past that point, we will be starting to compare fare revenue on an equitable basis. And what we would hope to see is that when we compare it to the same month in the previous year, we are seeing that increase relative to the increased patronage. But it was a challenging year to make those comparisons because there was that shift in subsidy that occurred partway through the year.
Right. So I suppose my comment really is around the fact that if we are continuing to see increased patronage and a decrease in revenue, which just to me, if we're going, our only option to make that up is to rate for it. And the reality of rates, 20% of our that rate goes as a general rate over the whole province. And if we're not going to increase the fares to balance it out, it becomes a difficult issue to sell to the rest of the province. So I just don't want to see that. Are we confident that that trend of providing we keep our patronage at the levels we have now or better, are we confident that we will not have our fare revenue decreasing?
With as much confidence as we have. So Gemma's just showed me some early data. So the Dunedin revenue is still down, but only just for the first 2 months of the year, and Queenstown's up. So we are starting to see those trends switch around.
And bear in mind, there's a difference between budgeted revenue and a comparison to revenue in the same month last year. So what's more important in my mind is actually revenue against what we budgeted, rather than revenue against the equivalent last year. So when we come to present financials, it's really important to keep an eye on, are we receiving the revenue the fare revenue that we forecast at the time we set budgets? Because all we're doing here is comparing how much fare box recovery we got. Where what's actually more important is the fare box revenue we're receiving the same as what we had set in our budgets, which is what is setting the rates.
Can I jump in there just to rephrase the question a bit? How are we planning to break even with the Dunedin Public Transport Activity Centre?
So we have based the rates on the OPEX from last year, which should assume that we break even. And then we've got the increase in fares that kick in at the end of September. And again, as provided we don't have a significant drop off in patronage, then we have developed the budget to be a break even budget, a fully rated NZTA co-funded budget.
Okay. Moving on to Gretchen.
Just wondering if we take into account population growth when we're looking at patronage as well. Where that question's going, particularly in Queenstown, with really high population growth, and whether it would assist us in determining whether we are lifting statistically the percentage per population that are jumping on public transport? Thanks.
Not for this process, we don't, it is something we look at if we're doing business cases, but not for these figures, they are just percentages, so it could be that they are below the growth rate in an area like Queenstown.
Thank you, Elliot.
Yeah, just to jump on the feedback data and the figure 11 under paragraph 28. Just noticing in May and June a significant increase in the timeliness and cancellations data, but also noticing that that's after the CRM was introduced, and it seems that the other category has significantly decreased or almost disappeared. So I'm just wondering if that is a significant, I mean, I guess that's feedback in general, but I'm presuming that's not a significant increase in people calling to let us know that the bus is on time and everything's good. So is that a significant increase in complaints around timeliness, or is that just better data management that we're able to categorize those other?
I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, the other category was for stuff that, so prior to the CRM, it was an extremely manual process collating the data. So you had an other category that would say all sorts of things that we now, more or less the push of a button, you can generate a report the transport team can work on. So it's, in terms of reporting on data, it's far better. So instead of having a broad other category that doesn't capture everything, we can now actually allocate those between the categories. So all the other category has done is sort of shrunk, and stuff that would have been pre-CRM in the other categories now moved into other categories, such as timeliness or behaviour or that sort of thing. In terms of increases in complaints or feedback, so we're monitoring feedback, so it's not all complaints. Particularly with June, with the new, something like a 70% of the network was affected by minor route changes in Queenstown, new routes and things, and increased frequency, new timetables. We expect more inquiries, possibly more complaints as well, so that goes up. But this chart that we've been presenting for the last couple of years or so, which is relatively high level, the CRM allows us to, hopefully in time for the next period, to give a much richer view of what's going on. We can sort of do it at a route level, at a suburb level, all sorts of things, and give a really clear picture. So, for example, I haven't done this yet, but potentially, you can see by route, there's X amount of complaints for timeliness on Route 8 and none for Route 1. Those sort of things to give more. This is, sort of a high level view, but we now, CRM is really good at just generating reports that we don't have to manually spend hours putting together.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thanks.
Just on the CRM system, can you just describe, Julian, because I assume complaints come in all forms, might be email, maybe phone, maybe text, whatever, or personally to a driver or whatever. So how is that information, how does it end up into the system? Is that a manual process, or can it be done, is it automated in some way?
So no matter where the feedback or complaint or praise comes from, it all ends up in the CRM. So if it's a personal phone call to myself, I will log that. But generally through our customer experience team, through email, and so on, and it's logged into the system, which was introduced a few months ago, and then it's sort of permanently embedded in there until it's resolved. In terms of if it's a complaint and tracking to operators, previously you'd have streams of emails, phone calls, that sort of thing, phone calls, emails, all that sort of stuff, and logging in what's going on, whether it's an event or a complaint or some feedback, is logged in this single system with a unique ID, and then everything's managed throughout that system. So it's building on the system itself. It also does our accounts and finance and other things. So it's the same sort of core system.
I thought you may be using AI. That was
not AI, not at this stage.
okay. So if a complaint was logged with a driver, Do the contractors have an obligation for that information to filter back to your team?
Yeah, so they have contractual obligations on giving us feedback or complaints if it was a driver. Occasionally they do come in or they'll call, but generally we expect them to put them through their local depot manager. And then that feedback comes to us. Often it's actually in meetings and things, but yeah, we would log and deal with that as well.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Kevin, then Gary.
Oh, you go first, Gary.
Yeah, that's
really good here.
Just going back to fair revenue, and I'm just not sure if I'm picking this up correctly or not, but our increases in patronage are modest, but they are increases, which is good. Our diminishment in revenue is far more substantial, but I would have thought that what you would expect to see with the increase in patronage, you would get an increase in revenue. So then obviously there are other factors that are changing and other things that have changed. But on those numbers, because some of those are like 10% reduction, 7% reduction, are we even going to meet our budgets by those reductions? And is this an indicator that the balance is incorrect between rates contribution and fare contribution?
So we have a level of confidence that we will meet our budget expectations. So we have, as I say, set our budgets based on last year's operating costs. The reduction in fare revenue is in part because of that removal of NZTA grants. And so we have based our numbers on our patronage data and fare revenue to get to where we've set the budgets. I've now forgotten, sorry, the second part of your question.
Is the balance correct? So what we will have to look to for the next year, have we got an urgent remedial situation? Because are we going to get to the end of next year and have a further reflection like this of an increase in patronage, which is good, but again, a more substantial drop in revenue?
We don't anticipate that happening. However, what we don't know is what will happen when the fares go up. And so there are a few parts to that fare increase. So the adult fare is going up, but we're also reintroducing child fares. So we don't know what that will do to patronage. So those children 6 to 12 that were free will pay $1.50. So in theory, if we retain the same number of passengers and the same composition, we should get more revenue in. Every child now pays. But we don't know how many passengers we'll lose, as a result of those fare changes. So that's where the uncertainty lies. But our modelling has showed that $2.50 and $1.50 should. The modelling says that will have a small impact on our patronage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, probably just being a bit picky. Our executive summary gives us 5 bullet points that are all the good stuff, but in reality, part of this whole paper shows that we have a decline in income. So I just wonder if the next time we could possibly make the executive summary reflect the whole paper.
Yep.
And with that, probably to the CE, we have reported and had a press release go out that says Otago continues to experience strong public transport growth, when in my understanding, the growth is in Dunedin and Queenstown. If councillor from South was here, he would say there's still not a bus service in Tapanui, and the comments I'm currently getting exceptionally loudly in my region, in the Waitaki, there's no bus services there. So is this the appropriate time to ask where that is at, or certainly should we not be reflecting that this is an increase in Queenstown and Dunedin, but not the whole of Otago?
So I guess in terms of the media release, we frame things as happening in Otago. That's the region that we're responsible for. Within the release, it will refer to the Dunedin and Queenstown networks, but it's it is a service that is under the Otago umbrella. The Oamaru service, we are hoping that there will be a paper coming very shortly. The council directed us to investigate options, and I understand the community's been very active, and you have probably been looped into quite a few of those conversations. So we're quite hopeful that there is a solution here that will enable us to deliver on that resolution that was part of the annual plan this year, and that paper will be able to come before the end of the triennium for this council to consider. So it still needs to be just worked through with the group that are active up there in the community, but it should be able to happen before you finish up for this term.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
I just want to unpack, one of the problems that we have is super gold, and I look around this table and it's amazing how many people get into that age where they get those cards. Just been applying for my husband's. No, but anyway, the issue here is that, especially given a cost of living crisis, we could have absolute huge growth on that orange patronage number and get no revenue because a lot more people decided to use 9 till 3 free services. Is that correct? That's capped because of the capping of the super gold.
Yeah, so in essence, yes, if we get more
No.
super gold
Users.
users,
Mhm.
Our NZTA funding is a bulk fund.
And it's capped.
Well, it's a bulk fund, I'm being told, not capped, but yes, it's one amount,
Yes.
irrespective of the number of people. So you're right, we could have a surge in super gold users that don't generate additional revenue beyond our payment from NZTA.
And that is absolutely totally fine, but it's not transparent or obvious. And how would we know if that happened?
So we do track patronage by type.
Yeah.
So you would see a change in that.
30%.
So
in that
it's
detail.
not on, which graph, paragraph 13, which is Queenstown one.
So,
Yeah.
So Queenstown, we don't get a lot of super gold
Yeah.
users, but if you look at figure 7, under paragraph 7, Dunedin patronage by type, you'll see 13% of our users are super gold. So it's the green wedge on that pie graph
So
on page 34.
yeah, page 34. Okay, and so that changing, so we don't get the change in that in the same way as we do on a bar graph. So I'd have to go and look at previous reports. To see if that is changing or increasing?
Same as a year ago.
If there was a significant change in patronage by type, we would report that as a significant change.
Okay, because it is understanding that link, that it's a substantial number of our users. So as we transfer, and the subsequent question, as we transfer to having to charge for the child fare, will we be getting a slightly separate bar graph that really analyses how that particular part changes? Potentially. Because we should be able to see how often those B cards are or aren't being used, is that correct?
Can I just make a comment for this? So given that every time we come to this committee, this is not a criticism, I understand how important revenue is, but we have this circular conversation trying to understand revenue and comparatives to last year, and I just went back to the previous public agenda within this paper, and there was a substantial explanation of why there is a difference between the revenue from a year ago and then what we've seen through this year. So we will do, I say royal we, the team at the end, and I'll certainly stay in touch with Nina, we'll do a significant amount of work before the next training and the start of the next committee, whether it's public transport or whatever the incoming council decides it needs to be able to reflect all of the key matters relating to revenue, particularly as it relates to the changes in fees, because it is clearly something that the table has a lot of interest in and totally understand that. So we just need to make sure we present the data in a way that answers a lot of these questions, and you pick up what you need from the report.
That's great. It is only because of this one change, and I'd love
But it's
to.
not a,
yeah.
just it's very clear to me that that is the single biggest issue.
Yeah.
So we can do some work just to really,
Understanding which routes may have dropped off is going to be really interesting in that space. Some, especially the longer haul, probably won't, but some of the short hauls might. So thank you.
Any further questions? If not, would someone like to move that this summary of public transport activity for Otago be noted? Thanks, Gretchen, seconded by Kevin. Gretchen, would you like to speak?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity because it is an annual reflection on where we're at, the full year network performance report, which is important to recognise that we have, as you mentioned, Chair, been through a really disruptive couple of years, and I just wanted to recognise that there have been lifts in patronage, and that those haven't come randomly. They've come with a whole lot of work from a whole lot of people. First of all, just really want to thank communities in Queenstown and in Dunedin who've got behind public transport, have bared with us through a lot of disruption, and also, I guess, infrastructure renewals and roadworks and pipes and things like that, which can influence reliability as well, or maybe not reliability, but the timing anyway of arrival of buses, and then also, as well as the bus users themselves, the operators and the drivers as well. It hasn't been easy ensuring that we have enough drivers, that they're really well supported and they're able to ensure that our services are reliable for community. As well as lifting our game in safety too, and bringing community together to work on those elements as well. We've worked together through a lot of challenges to get to where we are with a really successful, high-performing public transport network, which is outperforming many other areas in New Zealand. So I'm really proud of that. We can always do better, of course, and would always like to, but I just want to recognise that we are in a really good space. And I also wanted to take this opportunity as well to thank our staff for all the hard work that goes into that day to day as well, as we're on the front desk, as we're answering phones, on-demand services, timetables, ensuring people can get where they need to be, planning the logistics to ensure that we have got value for money as well, and we're doing things as efficiently as we can, lifting our game there as well. So staff, thank you very much for all of that work as well. Also to the co-chairs of this committee as well, as we've worked throughout the triennium to lift our game in terms of how we work with TAs and other partners, being more open, more transparent, working together as a team, lifting our game because everyone wins from well running public transport networks, particularly in those larger centres, and as we plan for connecting further throughout our region as well, which we've heard really strongly is needed. So ensuring we can do that efficiently and effectively as well as our next step. But a big thank you to the chairs for progressing us really strongly through this triennium. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kevin.
Look, transport, a very good report. Thanks very much. Look, this is a huge part of the Otago Regional Council's activities. It's sort of $40 to $45 million of our turnover. It is a huge space. We have got, I just want to congratulate the staff in that whenever we seem to have a problem somewhere within the systems that we're running at the moment, they show flexibility and understanding of our public. And I think that's absolutely critical, because if we're going to grow it, we need to keep that attitude going. So we will in time, because you'll keep getting pressed to pressed by councillors around the table to get the numbers right, and that will come. But please keep your attitude the same. I just want to reflect, I was lucky to have Jack and Omri with me at a public meeting, and he stepped up and gave an exceptionally good explanation of where we're at, what we're trying to achieve, and it was very much appreciated by the group that was there. We will get a result up that way soon. I'm sure of it. I'm confident the staff will do it, but keep the good work up. But we've just got to continually remember that we have the burden of the finances sitting on the right shoulders, and we've got to keep working towards that. But well done, and thanks for the year.
Thanks, Kevin. Any further speakers?
Thank you. Just very briefly, look, the increase in patronage is great, and we need to see more of that. The drop in revenue is concerning, and we will need to be reflective of that into the future.
Thank you. Hey, my comments, I'll just go back to my initial comment. We're in this evolving process, recovering from COVID, and we've got most of that behind us, but also I believe in public transport for the Otago region. We always want to keep punching above our weight. We're always wanting to try and improve the customer experience when it comes to whether it's reliability, punctuality, a sustainable operation in terms of moving towards electric buses, which we're on that journey now. Convenience, that there's a whole package of expectation that our customers have, and the level of tolerance varies depending on the customer and depending on how important it is that they get from A to B on a particular time frame. So we will continue to evolve, but once again, this report is a very solid performance, and we're heading in the right direction. And if I reflect back prior to the beginning of this triennium, we were on the ropes in terms of public transport. We had two TAs, Dunedin City and Queenstown Lakes, who were really keen to take us out, whether it was politically, Facebook. It was just an ongoing battle, and I think we've come a long way from nearly being knocked out at that stage in terms of delivering public transport to the Otago region and focusing on Dunedin and Queenstown at this stage. But we have come a long way, and the trajectory is heading in the right direction, which I think is a fantastic outcome. So thanks to all concerned. Well done. Without further ado, there are no further speakers. Gretchen, did you want to write a reply?
No, thank you.
Good. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to 9.3, the cruise ship season 24-25 review of public transport, and this is to present information on the performance of the 24-25 cruise ship public transport services, and I'll hand over to Welcome Simon. Probably in your hands or Julian's hands. All your hands.
Yeah, look, this is a quick summary of the last season's public transport support. Sumit's been project managing this for the past couple of seasons, and he'll give you an overview of how things went.
So thank you for being here, and we're in your hands.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. The cruise ship season runs from October in April. We had 72 ships in total that visited Dunedin in 2024-25 season. We implemented a similar cruise ship plan to the 2023-24 season with a few minor adjustments. We ran 358 additional trips to the current Route 14 schedule, which means like during weekdays, we have half an hour service. So we bumped up to 15 minutes during peak hours in the morning when people do get off the ship and jump on the bus. And in the afternoon, city to port, where passengers start going back towards the ship. And over the weekends, the 1 hour service comes in half an hour during those peak hours. We generated 25K of revenue by collecting the fares of those cruise ship passengers. We had very few complaints received compared to the previous 2023-24 season. And we continue to receive a positive feedback from the community, DCC, Port Otago, and the ORC customer service staff. Unfortunately, there was no co-funding for this 2024-25 season from NZTA. But we did receive a contribution from Port Otago of 50K towards the total cost. For 25-26 season, upcoming season, we are continuing to planning that. And we will be taking a paper to council to endorse a plan for the forthcoming season, where we expect a 30% drop in the total number of cruise ships.
And I'll just add, so what we'll be looking for this year is a bit more optimization. So it cost us a bit more. We had a reduction in passengers because the cruise ships realised what we were doing and they reduced the cost of their shuttles. So we actually saw less passengers this year jump on our buses. And so yeah, we'll just be looking to optimise that. It's not a science, it's a bit of a juggle, but we possibly had too many services this time compared to the year before, where potentially not enough. So we will be looking just to optimise that those number of buses if the cruise ships are going to offer the similar cheaper shuttle to the city.
Is it possible that NZTA may in the future come to the party? Sorry.
I would say it's unlikely at this point if this is not one of their main funding streams.
Yeah. Now the query had just the web page, and that seemed to be a real hit with the number of visitors using the page. Obviously, that will continue on. And is there any other mechanism or avenues to reach out? We're reaching out to through every possible avenue to ensure we connect with cruise ship visitors.
Yeah, so the website will continue. The locally, the community board and the person who sort of runs the Port Chalmers Market and Currency Exchange, and they have ties specifically with the cruise operators themselves. So the passengers are well aware through Facebook groups and various other things of the services we're offering. To the point that some are quite savvy. So most people would be gathering at the bus stop where the other people walk up the hill near the beginning of the route because they know that they're guaranteed a seat. So there's a lot of awareness among passengers about the service.
Thank you. Questions? Kate, then Elliot. Tim.
So if I look at paragraph 36 and the updated cost table in there, presuming we're not expecting to be funding, whether through Port Otago or through a deficit, if there's 30% less cruise ships, we're reducing that anyway, the supply of buses, and then we'll do a reduction anyway because of the oversupply last time. And that's how we'd get the savings, or reduce the loss.
Yeah. So the plan is a reduction in number of. So basically, the number of, if you look at it, probably do it from that table, but the number of buses per vessel will drop, and reflecting the expectations of maybe 30% less trips, and also slightly less popular because of cruise ships offering free shuttles or cheaper rides than they did the previous season.
It would be great if we got that under zero at best, and a profit at best. So the Port Otago, how do they work that subsidy? Is it on the number of?
So that was just an agreement I reached directly with Port Otago as a contribution they make. But the obviously the difference between revenue and expenditure was greater than the conversation we had with Port Otago at the start of the year, which led to us covering some of that deficit as well.
Yeah.
But we would be expecting the contribution again from Port Otago for the upcoming year.
It's similar amount, or okay.
The conversation's still to have, but there's no reason to believe that they won't provide a similar level of contribution. It might need to reduce because the total number of ships is reducing. I guess just because it's related to the couple of questions, I think the outcome we're seeing here is while it's ended up in a cost for us, primarily it is because we've seen a response from the cruise ships that we were hoping we'd see a couple of years ago, where they've actually gone about providing far more affordable transport options that mean that the cruise ship passengers don't have to rely on public transport, which is what the issue was.
Yes.
So that's been positive, and hopefully that continues to occur, and then we just need to adjust our plans. But certainly from my point of view, I only really see stuff when it goes wrong. There was really positive feedback from the community board in particular, who are very active in the space, and just generally from the bus users in terms of ensuring that our regular public transport users on the West Harbour were able to continue using their services. So certainly financially, obviously it's not an ideal result, but it's born out of the cruise ships now responding the way we hoped they would respond.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, is that people who usually use that service, the Port Charlotte service, managed to get to work and managed to get to exams and everything, and that is utterly and fine, but it is one of those costs that then shared by everyone. It's nice if we can get that down. No, absolutely, I concur with that, and it's brilliant that collectively the cruise ship companies have responded to some pressures, which is great.
Thank you, Elliot.
I was just wondering if that Port Otago contribution counted as private revenue share.
No. Good question. Tim.
That was a very astute question for a non-accountant. The question I have is around a few years, well, it might have been last year, Port Otago was saying they had some discussions with either KiwiRail or Dunedin Railways, I think, in regards to the rail option of moving cruise passengers into Dunedin. Is that still an alternative that is available to us? Has there been any conversation with Dunedin Railways or KiwiRail, whoever would operate a service like that?
We haven't had conversations with KiwiRail. There are some trains on sort of touristy things that are arranged with the cruise ship operators, specific to a specific vessel or cruise package. But we haven't had any conversations or been aware of any conversations with KiwiRail, as in the transport.
It just seems like a logical option.
So I can add a little bit. Port Otago are in regular conversations with KiwiRail, obviously because of the commercial role they play in transporting freight to the port. There are some challenges around the use of that line for passenger trains and freight trains, but it is something that I know Kevin continues to push with KiwiRail, is the opportunity to use rail to shift a number of passengers. It has happened in the past, and I think in an ideal world it would form part of the transport options that people coming off ships have. But it's a conversation that happens between Port Otago and KiwiRail because they effectively pick up from the port. It's not a conversation that we're party to it because it's part of the overall transport conversation, and if they can provide that, then we need to then potentially adjust our bus service. But it's a conversation for those two parties to have.
So where did Dunedin Railways fit into this? Because I mean, they'd be operating the...
So Dunedin Railways operate it, but KiwiRail have got to let them use the lines, from what I understand. So it needs all of those parties around the table.
Thank you, Kevin.
Going back to figure 3, which is on page 47, we've got a cost there of 5,402 to a ticket seller, which is looks like a 20% surcharge on top of our ticket price. Is that what's happening at the moment?
No, that's just the cost of a staff member. That's their salary to be down there selling the tickets
All
every
right.
day there's a cruise ship.
Okay, so once we have the new card in, which has come with the Mutu card, whatever we're going to call it, so that will then negate the need for that?
So people would be able to use a credit card, a contactless payment. So assuming they have a credit card, they
Yes.
would be able to do that. If they didn't, there would need to be a Motu Move retailer in the area.
Somewhere in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if they have so I thought it was just going to be a Visa card that you use, or an app on it or something. So they would then go down to the $2 fare as opposed to the $2, down to the standard fare and not a cash fare. That'd be right.
If you're paying contactless, then you'd pay the
Yeah.
card fare. Yep.
Good.
Thank you. Elliot.
Just gonna ask it, so you don't, for the multi-move, we're not talking about this right now, but just jumping on that, you wouldn't have to register your EFTPOS card with a multi-move account or anything to get the sort of discounted price? It would just be if you're not paying cash in any way?
No, so basically anything you can, your Apple Watch, your phone, just anything that is
And it
a
doesn't have to be
standard
registered.
Visa, MasterCard, how do you pay, that kind of thing, yeah.
Any further questions, Gary?
Thanks, Phil. Have I got this right? So since we've added a service, have the cruise companies also enhanced the service that they were or weren't providing to a lesser extent? Is it, or have they stayed the same with their shuttles and what they either fund or what they provide for their passengers to fund?
Significantly reduce the cost of their shuttles, which means that more passengers are opting for the shuttles as opposed to them all getting on our public bus.
So then we've provided a service, but then we're providing it at a lesser amount. So then the shuttles and the other companies providing a service that will be paid for by the cruise companies or paid for by the passengers have also now paying less, which means those companies or those people who are Dunedin people who will be your local companies are now wearing a lesser cost. It almost feels like a drive to the bottom. Why wouldn't we have provided the extra service but matched it with the cost that the cruise companies were paying? Because the cruise passengers most likely can afford it and it's a specific service into the city as opposed to trying to also provide a public transport service.
So we could have set the ticket price at a higher price point, but people still had the option of paying cash, and we can't differentiate. If someone chooses to pay cash when they get on the bus, it's a $3 cash fare. That could be you or me or a person off the cruise ship. We could have elected to make the actual tickets more expensive. We didn't, but that's certainly something we can consider if that's the direction.
I just looking at the numbers, to me, it almost looks as though we need to revisit and rethink this. Sorry, that's not a question.
So the fundamental challenge we've got is we can't differentiate between a cruise passenger and a member of the public getting on a public transport bus. If they stand at the stop, they are entitled to get on the bus and pay a normal cash fare. Or if they get a beaker, so that there is no ability for us. And this is the challenge we had right back at the start when this issue blew up. Is everyone was saying, well, why can't you just stop the cruise ship passengers and only allow the West Harbour residents to go, which is nice in theory, but actually it's a public transport service and anyone who is in the public domain can access it. So when they get off the ship and the communication that goes between the cruise passengers, they all are sharing what the cheapest transport option is and how do I get into town when I land in Dunedin. And so they will know that paying a public transport fare was significantly cheaper than any other option they had to get from Port Chalmers into town, which is why the issue arose in the first place, because we had hundreds of people queued up at that bus stop down the bottom of the main street. And so this solution's been put in place, but there is no ability for us. If we tried to do it that way, we would just end up back in the same situation where they all just queued at the bus stop and said, oh, I'm just a resident, I'm going to pay my resident fee. So it's a really challenging thing to resolve. The ultimate solution is that the cruise ships sort it and they provide good, cheap transport that people can get off a bus and jump on a shuttle and get dropped off in town. And we're starting to see that. And then hopefully season after season, we might see a little bit more of it to a point where I think we will probably always be in a position where there's some sort of supplementary service, but it's significantly less than what we've had to do to kick things off.
So sorry, just a supplementary question to that then, because that's a helpful explanation. But we can't have almost a separate service that has cruise on it.
No.
We could, but they would just go and wait at the
Yeah.
normal bus stop and
Yeah.
jump on our normal scheduled bus.
$2.
So we could do it, but it wouldn't work.
But if it was more tailored to matching the cruise passengers so when they disembark the ship and driving sideways to Dunedin Rain, and the first thing they see is a bus that is within 20 metres, so they're not soaked getting to the normal bus stop, they are able to get straight on that bus, and it's timed with when they're all embarking.
Yeah.
And then they pay more for it because it's a more specific route.
So
Doesn't it just
that's
make sense?
effectively the private shuttles, and that's not, that's something that's poured in the ships. But from my conversations, with my understanding, if there is a cheaper option, that is what people will go for. It surprised me, but it's that they are driven by what is the cheapest way I can get from A to B.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Human nature. Thank you.
Yeah, just to reconfirm that we were fortunate enough to be able to have the physical ability to bike from Curious Bay to Portobello on a tremendous, I think you might have helped construct that whole bike trail at some stage, Mr. CE. And we met 4 people from London that were on a cruise ship, and they thought our bus service was phenomenal and that they had the option of taking a shuttle service, but said, and this was after we had made these very good and the shuttle prices had come down, and they said, blow them, they're ripping us off and we're looking for the cheapest option because we're on a budget, and what better way to do it than the local transport and meet the local people. So they said that is just rife within the whole industry. So I'll share that.
Thank you. Kate.
Well, I just want to also talk about that, because it is about meeting the locals, and these people who travel on buses regularly all over the world, because that's what they do in the rest of the world, actually like that experience of doing and meeting locals, which they can do. And you get on the buses all around, and that's what the locals do to each other, but that's also what they do when they're not just looking at their iPads, iPhones, but they and that I think is something that we have to recognise, that is part of the visiting experience, is to meet people, and that is why public transport being available for all users is actually really important, and I think that's often missed in part of that experience of being a cruise ship. I also note that the cruise ship business has developed and changed quite markedly from the first ships that came in, which were in about 20 to 30 years ago, where they were small and high end. They are now very much for Joe Blogs who regularly use those and aren't expecting to be paying phenomenal rates. And that is the mass transport and what that does to consumerism and everything else.
Thank you. Elliot, you're happy to move if no further questions? No, I'm happy to second. Elliot, would you like to speak to the?
Just briefly, just to note, I still have flashbacks to the 2022-23 season. I think that was a massive challenge, but you know, it is a testament to the transport team and the cooperation of all the other stakeholders that came to the table. That it's been a massive success. That we're able to implement dedicated solutions there so that people in those West Harbour communities can rely on our buses and actually are able to get on, and then also in the information space, providing that really convenient information both for the passengers and for the local community. I think it's also quite a good example of us influencing the market too, for the benefit of us and the community. And I'll also note that even though it is a cost to us, and even excluding the Port Otago contributions, it's still I believe, looking at the numbers, a higher fare portion than the network average. So it would actually be increasing our overall private revenue share, which is positive for NZTA funding conversations. But yeah, I think this has been a really massive success over the past few years, massive improvement. So thanks to the team. Cool.
Thanks, Elliot. I'd just like to add, at the time when things went quite pear-shaped a couple of years ago now, George Street, Port Chalmers. I happened to be in George Street, Port Chalmers on a cruise ship day, and I think it was a large cruise ship that was there. it was the best word to describe it, was chaotic. It was chaotic to even be able to walk down the footpath because it was just chocker full of cruise ship visitors waiting to get on the bus. We know the impact, as Elliot's alluded to, on our local customers, and yeah, I just want to pay offer thanks to all concerned, because I think we've moved into a proactive stance rather than a reactive stance. And I just look on the paragraph 17 where you have these regular contact meetings with the key parties, which is a good foundation to ensure that you keep ahead of the game. So that's fantastic. And I just want to acknowledge Port Otago playing their part in this as well. I know the cruise ship business is important to them, and it's great that they've come to the party to ensure that we can satisfy not only our locals, but find a way forward, a solution. So thanks to all. Are there any other speakers? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
Nice, thank you.
Moving on to 9.4, which is the 25-26 Queenstown News Services and On-Demand update. This update to the committee is on the introduction of stage 1 of the Queenstown Public Transport Business Case and also the Mosgiel On-Demand Service. Welcome to Grace.
No, this is the lovely Sarah.
Oh, sorry.
Stolen from customer services, and they may or may not get her back.
Sorry,
so
Sarah.
Sarah's been seconded to our team for a few months, and she is going to, her and Julian are going to speak to this paper.
Awesome. We're in your hands.
Yeah, so on the 30th of June, we introduced some key upgrades, timetable changes and so on to the PT network. And two of the key things we did one in Queenstown was a new higher frequency Queenstown service linking Arrowtown, Jacks Point and Central Queenstown via Madden's Road, and an on-demand service replacing the fixed scheduled loop services in Mosgiel in Dunedin. So this gives an overview, this paper gives an overview of their performance in the first month of operation. I'll do a quick summary of Queenstown, and Sarah will go over the on-demand piece, which she's been very heavily involved in from the start and continues to be tailoring it as we speak. So for Waka Dipu, the changes form part of the Queenstown Public Transport Business Case, which was endorsed under the Way to Go partnership, and aims for a 40% shift to alternative transport modes through staged improvements to 2030 and beyond. The case is implemented in stages. Stage 1, which we've just introduced, is quick wins. And then we have stage 2, 2027, being some transformational upgrades, electrification and so on, and larger vehicles. And stage 3 being full electrification and high frequencies. So stage 1 improvements we introduced in June, as I said, are some higher peak frequencies on various routes 3 and 4, but also the key one being the Jacks Point Queenstown Arrowtown connection, which replaces for Jacks Point residents the previous services Jacks Point to Frankton, which required changing at Frankton to go anywhere else beyond that point, and utilising Madigan's Road for a direct connection to Arrowtown. So the early results, it's only a month's worth of data, but they are positive. Overall for Queenstown, we've seen a 7% increase in patronage compared to the same month in the previous year. But if we isolate the Arrowtown and Jacks Point services, that's routes 2 and 4, we've seen a 19% increase in patronage across those routes. So a lot of that will be people, perhaps with Arrowtown residents, transferring their patronage from to the new Madigan's Road route. But actually, we've seen in the data a significant chunk of new trips being generated that wouldn't previously have been generated. And there's a table explaining all this in the paper. I'll hand over to Sarah now, who'll give an overview of on demand, and then happy to take any questions afterwards.
Thanks, Julian. Sarah.
Kia ora, so I'm just speaking on the on-demand report. So Orbis On Demand is part of our fully electric Mosgiel fleet, replacing the 80 and 81 routes. It has increased the service area in Mosgiel now, including Wingatui, Kinmont and East Taieri. This aligns with some prior long-term plan consulting that we did, asking for wider public transport coverage in Mosgiel. Comparing the July 2025 patronage with July 2024, excluding Supergold this year, we saw an increase of 27%. Patronage of children aged 5 to 12, we saw an increase of 929%. Youth aged 13 to 18, an increase of 14%, and even a small increase in community service card holders as well. The overall increase, or the overall patronage, including Supergold for this year, actually dropped 18%. However, we have had an engagement plan in place for this. Along with this, since this report was written, we have seen an increase in overall patronage, including the Supergold. And we've also made some recent infrastructure changes as well, which you'll see in the report, including a new bus stop outside the Mossbury Health Centre, and also a new route directly through Chatsford and Birchley Retirement Village, which we think has contributed to the recent increase in patronage as well. And then overall feedback we received by the app for this was largely positive. About 78% of this was positive feedback, and anything else that we get, we are monitoring and basically working through to resolve any concerns we receive through the app as well.
Excellent, Sarah. Thank you very much, and thanks, Julian. Like any service, it's good to roll them out, and then it's often testing how things, how the customers react, or there's always going to be some challenges, but it's great that these new services are now in play. We know how important they are for both the Queenstown services and obviously at Mosgiel. So yeah, well done, and we just look forward to people living in those areas taking advantage of these new services. I know Queenstown is a challenging space and will always be so. We seem to be, continuing to chase our tail. So we hope that over time we can get ahead of the game. I suppose ultimately that will happen, but of course we are reliant on other parties, and the key party is NZTA, and it's good that at least that first step of improvements in Queenstown have been implemented. Questions, Kate?
I have a number on the on-demand, if that's okay. Sorry. A number of questions on the on-demand in Mosgiel, and thank you for rolling this out, because I appreciate that bus was sometimes looping with no one on it, or very few. But I am just slightly disappointed, I suppose, with the figures and what it portrays, but maybe I'm reading it wrong. I mean, it has been a drop off. The 749 in July 2024, is that in the whole month? No.
Yeah, so that's for the month.
Okay, so and so in theory, the 929% increase that you talk about, child 5 to 12, could be 2 children doing it every day of the month, really. Yeah, virtually.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah. Okay.
School.
Okay, so it's not necessarily substantial, but it has changed. Okay. My understanding and what I have really appreciated is that you've had staff on the bus when they've gone out, and presumably that they're getting feedback as well. Where does that go? Because I don't expect the Supergold people to be using the app necessarily to give feedback.
So pre and post launch, Sarah and other colleagues have been with multiple sort of pop-ups, the library going into the retirement homes. We trialled it beforehand with a mixture of people representing the sort of retirement villages, Age Concern, Blind Foundation actually using the service, and that has followed through after the launch. So the new infrastructure, the new bus stops and routes that Sarah mentioned, actually having a route that goes through the retirement villages, so people can get on the bus literally straight from the door rather than having to walk 200 meters down the road. And a key connection for them is getting to the other side of town, because the retirement villages tend to be on the east and the health centres on the west. We've never managed to get a bus stop there, but having worked with DCC and the property owners for Mosbury, have a stop directly outside the main entrance. So this is a month's worth of data, so it's early, but as Sarah said, subsequent data that we haven't put in the reports, we've only just got it, now shows that Super Gold has also increased compared to the previous year. So hopefully that trend will continue. We have also been, particularly in the pop-ups at the library that we did, I went to a couple of them, and the attendees generally were in the older demographic. We were staff for downloading the app for them, showing how it works. We do maintain through our customer experience team the ability to phone the ORC, and we can book the trip for people. So I think it's a matter of time, people getting used to a new form of travel. I've used it once, I have to get used to using it myself, it just takes time. But certainly the recent post this report data looks good, and I think the outreach work that Sarah and colleagues have been doing has been really, really positive.
And I couldn't agree more, but sorry, I think my question was, where does the data of people, so you've had people on the buses and you've had people at the libraries, where does their data go about the experience? Because we've only got the app, or did I miss that? Because what's measured given in here is the app responses, the customer feedback from those other people that you've just given and articulated really well, and obviously there's more coming.
Yeah, so the app itself, when you use it at the end of the trip, you have the ability to comment and rate it. So that's one set of data. Separately, calls coming in, emails, things like that will go through our CRM system when we log them there. So two separate sets of data. What we've got on the report is just what's come through the app at this stage.
So there will be other data that will be either good or bad, and possibly brilliant, that will also be there, but will come through possibly later in other reports. I just wanted to clarify that we're not just using only the feedback from the app.
Yeah, we haven't got a combined app and we certainly consider all the data that comes through.
And if I may just ask one other question, and I was had the privilege of one of the submitters who generated a discussion about this with you, Julian, at one of the public meetings about it. And the test was whether, are we measuring how many people are using those more outreach areas as a measure of success? It's great to see it covered in the map, but is it actually being used?
Yeah, so I guess in actually be able to get a case to get this approved and get co-funding and so on, our measure of success was primarily an increase in ridership. But then following, so we've been looking at this for about a year or so, and then following LTP consultation as well. And mostly there was a chap in Tari, I think he was using Tunnel, I think he was a friend of yours. That's it, yeah. He was using Tunnel Mobility, and the price of, he very much valued the service, but if you're paying $40 to go from Tari somewhere versus the ability to do $2 on demand, and it's quite a contrast. So we factored in the ability to cover as wide a geographic area as possible, including areas that a few years ago we didn't service but have become more developed, like Mungatui. So we haven't, in answer to your question, we haven't established a outside of ridership, hey, we need to monitor these areas and make sure that they're being used, but it's certainly something we'll consider in our future reporting and sort of measures for success.
Thank you very much. Compliments to the staff, because the going out and being on bus made it, I get it, and at the library service was a great outreach.
Thank you, Elliot.
I'll save my praise debate, but not that I'm hoping either way, but do we have an idea of if the service is feeding into the wider network, or mostly just sort of serving within Mosgiel needs? I guess more specifically, do we know how many users are transferring from the on-demand service onto the 77 and 78, for example?
The ability to analyze that data exists. It's slightly complicated, but it's something that we haven't done it yet. We can, obviously it's early in the month's data, but someone mentioned earlier the child, the big use of child first, so you can make an assumption that someone may be using to either direct to pirate school or to transfer onto another service. It's something we can look at. What Sarah and the team have been looking at is there are periods of the day where you might expect this kind of behaviour to happen, so before and after school, where the service is actually completely booked out. So we can draw some assumptions, but we haven't done the full analysis on that now.
Thank you, Kevin.
So we've now increased our stops to include a couple of the retirement villages. So, and we're picking up service from there, but historically I would have thought that that service would have been provided by the retirement village shuttle. So we're changing that around as such.
So the Doon Street is basically an intersection of a number of those areas. There's a bus stop there, and basically it was probably the key bus stop in the area for patronage, because people are coming from those.
Yes.
Yeah. So our service coming through the villages into there serves to replace that stop, but we want to capture as much of the population as possible. Sorry.
I was just going to say, what we understand is those rest homes still do run their shuttles, but there was additional demand that they couldn't meet, and so we're hoping that this will pick up.
So the movement of that, you're still doing so Doon Street goes by Brooklands Village, so that's still serviced?
Yes, so Doon Street is serviced by, it wasn't initially at launch, and Sarah and the team worked with the villages, so the bus now actually goes on the private road through the village itself and then exits onto Doon Street, where there's a bus stop, an actual physical bus stop as well. So there's multiple options for people in those villages and the nearby surrounding area.
Yeah, so I suppose just the subject, my concern of, I just think the service is just going to be superb once all these few bits and pieces sorted. But you've dropped 50% of your Super Gold users who are probably the people most in need of a service. So if you're picking up, are they? Yeah, I suppose there's no way you can determine whether they were people with inside the retirement village setups or people outside that retirement village setup. So we may have a cohort of people now sitting in that are not being serviced by this.
So you're right, we can't differentiate. We dropped in the first month, which is the data in the report. We've since recovered. And by the time we get to the next PATC, we'll have 3 months worth of data, and then we'll get a better picture. We do know, and this is why there was a lot of continues to be a lot of community outreach from other regions, such as Environment Canterbury, the Timaru service, that the most challenging area is that the older population, getting them onto the service and used to it.
Yeah.
So we've really concentrated our efforts in that area. So hopefully what we've seen in more recent weeks will continue.
And just if I could understand you, so if I haven't got an app, I can jump on the phone. Why do I have to ring ORC, and why aren't I ringing Richie's direct? Because you'll have to obviously ring Richie's to tell them that Kevin wants picked up.
So
I'll have an app though.
Yeah. When they phone, we are so our customer experience staff are using the app. So they're literally booking or a version of the app, desktop version. They're booking the trip for the person. We still.
Sorry, do you want to just tell me it's a cost thing? If we'd asked Richie's to do that as well, versus we've got an existing CX service that can do it nice and efficiently. So ultimately it drops the overall contract.
Yeah, and you just use it. Basically, you're the app user. Yeah. Thank you. Well done.
Any further questions? If not, I'm happy to move the report be noted. Can I just say seconded by Kevin, thank you. Look, can I just say, well done, getting to this point. Any new service is appreciated by our customers. There's no doubt about that. And once again, this is this journey we're on to which will always be on to try and deliver and meet those aspirations that we have at a higher level. And we look forward to the next update further down the track, whoever's around the table, because it's important that we have the information about how new services are being received, and the fact that you resolve problems on a daily basis, which is appreciated from a governance perspective as well, because once again, you are the face of the service in an operational perspective. So remaining nimble and being able to adjust as these issues arise, and new services are always going to have some prickly situations that won't meet everybody's needs. But I just use that word tolerance again. The community, there's a low level of tolerance from some customers of public transport, and there are others that probably cut you a bit of slack. So we're in that space, and we'll continue to communicate and react. So well done. Thank you so much. Any other speakers? Kate.
I'd like to congratulate the team. I'd also like to say that it's really important that we keep on investing in this to get it right, because I know that the keenness, other people watching this, and I was at a meeting in Milton last night where they were talking about on demand and seeing what that would mean for them, and or what it would mean for them if they only went to Mosgiel and could use services there. So I think it's a huge investment for the whole of the team and our understanding of how, and quite exciting what might happen regionally if we get this right. So I'm really congratulations to the staff, and I mean it when I hear that people are going to the library, and it may take 1, 2, maybe even 3 turns, but it is worth getting that right. It is, it's not necessarily intuitive, this stuff, and I know that having heard about it in Timaru and the difficulty getting people to roll up, we've got plenty at the start. So thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know changes can be hard. It seems like naturally, some teething issues did emerge, most of which have been resolved before this report, some of which sounds like have been resolved since this report, and then some we may still be working on. As we just heard, the Super number 2 have recovered since the month they're included in the report, and continued outreach, of course, will still be helpful. But if the chair will indulge me, I just wanted to pass on some of the feedback that I received via Facebook on the service from those in the community. So Karen said, I personally love the service and the drivers are so friendly. You only have to give 30 minutes notice to book. Juanita said, personally, I found this new bus service to be fantastic. I've used it almost daily since I started, and I never used the Loop bus in the last years. I haven't been driving. They've never missed a beat. They're where they're meant to be, and have been very accommodating. Fantastic move for Mosgiel. And then Donna said, it's great bus service and great drivers. Love it. Wish we had this years ago. Keep it up. Yay. Good.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. It's carried. Thank you very much, Sarah. Cheers. Thank you, Julie. Moving on to item 9.5, bus stop upgrade plan. This report is to update the committee on the work plan for Dunedin bus stop infrastructure and amenities for delivery in 25-26, with consideration for how targeted bus stop investments will address health and safety concerns. Welcome back, Daniel. We're in your hands. Thank you.
I'll just introduce, so you'll recall there was a resolution at Finance Committee some months ago to bring this paper through. So we had the bus stop audit and the resolution at Finance Committee. And so we are providing you this paper with a bit of a plan in terms of how we will start to address some of those challenges that we saw in the audit that we presented earlier. And Daniel can speak to the paper.
Thanks, Anita.
Daniel, thank you. So I'll take the paper as read, and I want to highlight 3 main points. The first is the kind of work that we've been doing with the bus stop audit has been to develop a priority list of bus stops from 1 to I think 880 something. So now we have that list. The way that we developed that list was the stops that come at the top are the ones that have the highest patronage generally, but we gave extra weighting to children and elderly. And then also we gave extra weighting to stops that are quite deficient to what they should be relative to the NZTA guidance. So on that list of 1 to 800, say, the top priority bus stops are the ones that have a lot of patronage, but that don't quite meet the requirements, whereas one at the lower end maybe don't get that many passengers and might be doing just fine. In terms of the health and safety, virtually every bus stop investment that we make in the future has positive health and safety benefits. So for example, if we add, painted bus box lines, that's health and safety because the buses have space to pull over. There's no cars parking in there. Also, if we want to add seats, obviously that has health and safety benefits for people wanting to sit down. And the last point I want to make is that moving forward, all the decisions that we make in how we progress through this priority list will first of all need to be worked through with stakeholder engagement with DCC, disability groups, the operators themselves, and just any local stakeholders that could be affected, but also that all the investments we make are considering value for money. So we want to make sure that we can have a high impact, for example, doing painting lines, bus boxes, and sort of the no parking lines on either side. We are actually quite cheap, and there's a lot of stops that are quite deficient in that, so we can really have a huge impact on many stops, rather than just kind of spending a ton of money on maybe 1 or 2 stops. So we've developed a framework to kind of balance those things so that we can maximize our value for money. And I welcome any questions or feedback.
Thanks, Daniel. Can I just ask with regards to, obviously, when you talk bus stops, you include obviously shelters, but the shelters are owned by the territorial authorities. We often, pay for them, but then they become an asset of, in this case, Dunedin City. So does the audit include issues associated with them? So in other words, identification of whatever it might be a health and safety issue with the bus stop, I don't know. With the bus shelter. The territorial authority, i.e. DCC, would be advised of that information, correct?
So all of this is DCC, one of the key stakeholders in this. So yeah, we fund the infrastructure and effectively hand over ownership of that asset. So the answer to your question is yes. I mean, if you look at number 1 on the list, for example, we had regular catch up with DCC that one yesterday, that they have their own Princess Street improvement project. So it may be that when we look at this one, which is what happens to be one of our most popular stops, we'll be working really close with them because we have to make sure it sort of phases in whatever they're doing. They may have plans already. Everything to do with assets, whether we own them, they own them, it's all really closely managed with the stakeholder.
Thank you. Okay.
I just want to look at paragraph 9 and your types of investment and adding the painted bus boxes on the road. I wish that's a very aspirational comment to say prevents. I'm not sure that it will prevent a car parking on it. The question I have though is, how effective is that? And the second part is, if it isn't effective in any particular stop, what are the processes to ensure that it's protected, that it can be?
So in terms of sort of cars parking and
Yeah.
things like that, yeah. So it depends on the area, I guess, but we have experienced issues with, firstly, it does have an impact putting the markings in the first place, and also the ingress and egress lines, so buses can actually get into the box. Historically, where we have had problem stops, particularly in the central city area in the bus hub itself, we've worked with DCC. They've been very quick to act and support us in parking enforcement. They can't focus on bus stops all day long, but we've from time to time given them a list of 5 or 6 stops. Hey, can you look at this or do something about these? The drivers self-report registration numbers and that sort of thing. So we work with the local authority on those sort of matters, but they are a deterrent for people parking in bus stops.
That's great. It's just as we roll more of these out, it's going to be interesting to see if there are certain areas. Now, the bus hub is very close to the DCC office where the motorbikes are. It's when it gets out to other areas I've been concerned, but that's a great response. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin.
Just after Councillor Noon comment that we set up the infrastructure, then DCC take control of it or whatever local authority it is. So why would we be doing maintenance on those and upgrading from when we handed them over? Should that not be DCC funded?
I guess it's open to debate, but as the sort of road controlling authority, they maintain it, and we are funding the maintenance. We would be doing it anyway if we owned it ourselves, but since it's, I guess, the principle is because it's sitting on their land and their roadways and footpaths and that sort of thing. I think that's the general direction around it.
The subtle difference is when we do it, 20% of that rating comes from the whole of Otago, whereas it would be from Dunedin ratepayers if it was DCC doing it. And so therefore you're putting an impost on. Yeah, I would have thought that you've handed over an asset. So when I buy my car off Ford, I have to look after it. I know there's a wee bit of guarantee in there, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so there are shared costs. It's not entirely. So, for example, a couple of examples that actually just are out there by the exchange. So, as part of the Princes Street improvements between effectively Octagon and South Dunedin, there've been substantive bus stop changes, and that involves curbing and moving stuff and on-street stuff. And it's not all we don't pay for changes to footpaths and curbs and moving dustbins and other bits and pieces to accommodate bus stops, resurfacing when there's damage, all those sorts of things. So there's some split costs between the two.
Yeah,
I think generally the costs, getting a level of service in place or a change to the level of service would be our cost as part of the work we do to set public transport and the supporting public transport infrastructure. The general maintenance, things like cleaning and that, are picked up, as I understand, through the DCC transport contract. So I think that's the difference. And then all of it is obviously NZTA co-funded as part of the overall public transport funding package. So I think it's in the level of service where and where we propose through this program to improve a level of service, then we would pick up that cost with NZTA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? We complete that. Would someone like to move that we note this report? Moved by Elliot, second by Ellen. Elliot, would you like to speak to the report? No. Ellen? No. Thank you very much for the report. Look forward to the progression of implementing the upgrades to these first 10 on the priority list. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. I'll try that again.
Aye.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Against.
Carried. You want that recorded? You note that. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 9.6, which is the Public and Active Transport Committee Triennium highlights. Purpose of this report is to provide the committee with a summary of the achievements during this triennium. Welcome, Jack and Julian. We're in your hands.
Thank you. Yeah, so the purpose of the paper is to highlight some of the key successes from the past triennium. Jack will talk to you briefly from a planning perspective, and I'll go a quick summary from an operational perspective. Yep, so over to Jack.
Welcome, Jack.
Okay. I'll just quickly run down the line slightly in reverse of the items, but I won't take too long. on it. So starting at the end, just that supplementary to a lot of these processes has been the PTAGs with our DCC and QLDC territorial authorities. There's been sort of sharing some of those responsibilities. I can't say much about those. Obviously, from a planning perspective, and we're talking public transit planning because the regional plans comes under RTC. But the really big items have been the business cases. The Queenstown business case was a very big process. I mean, we were one of only a few places in the country that achieved funding for new PT services investment, although we didn't receive funding for new infrastructure. So as Gillian discussed, stage 1 of that's already in action, and there is more to do on that in the future. Meanwhile, we also had a Dunedin business case, which gives us a really strong evidence base, although it was not endorsed by NZTA. Obviously, given the funding situation nationally, that's not a particularly exceptional thing to happen. A lot of places around New Zealand experience the same sort of thing. Reflecting back to other things on the list, before we went through our current procurement and RPTP, we did an update on the procurement strategy, which outlined some of our thinking and approach, how we approach public transport. That was endorsed, was it end of 2023 or sometime around there? But the really big item that we achieved relatively recently was the new regional public transport plan, which has been described as a sort of social contract with our community about how we approach public transport. We took a bit of we did very deep work on how we approach that, and we engaged with this committee in a few sessions, and eventually we got 549 submissions, which is about twice as many as the previous process got, and on a per capita basis, much higher than processes in Wellington, Auckland, and so on. So there was a lot of interest, and that's now in place. And Councillor Malcolm mentioned comments in Oamaru. There was someone was handing out pages from that plan around the room. So people do pay attention to these things and the community. So it's great piece of work. And that was Councillors Noon, Weir and Wilson on the panel for that. That was a good process. So I'll hand over to Gillian. I'll talk about some of the minor issues and challenges that we've had to overcome in the operations space since 2022.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Jack. A lot of this actually been covered in previous papers, but as we noted, our services are recovering really well post-COVID. We're the highest performing region in the country after the sort of big three of Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and we're some way ahead of the next similarly sized PTA. We've introduced some significant improvements across the region, be they in the Wakatipu, to the north of Dunedin, all the way up to Palmerston, or the more skilled services to the south that we talked about earlier. We've got 2 contracts exclusively using electric vehicles. We have 2 electric bus depots, more to come, I think, over the next few months with tendering into the future. We've made a lot of significant infrastructure changes. We'll highlight in the paper of the tertiary precincts super stop, which is a collaborative effort with us, DCC and NZTA, using some climate emergency relief funding. We've been rolling out solar powered e-stops, extra large dual axle buses, the new on-demand service we talked about earlier, some significant changes to improve accessibility in South Dunedin in June, which are a culmination of about 3 years of work, and recently signed a permanent contract for the Queenstown ferry service as well, which we hope to see some improvements in the future. So Jack and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Julian. Yeah. that's not to be shared with the committee, that conversation. Okay, no, just checking. I just want to acknowledge the team, and I know there may be some questions for you, but there's a whole lot of activities, particularly on operationally, that not a whole lot of activities, but a whole lot of issues that are resolved that we never ever see. And I know that for a fact because I know the conversations that the operational staff have with whether it's community boards or community groups or individual customers. It's happening all the time, and in this report, it highlights some of the changes that have occurred throughout the Dunedin area and Queenstown area, whether it comes to the timetable, the actual services, etc. So there's a degree of nimbleness that our staff have developed to be able to do our very, very best to meet our customers' needs. So I just want to thank you very much for that. In terms of policy and strategy, I think once again, we've set a good solid framework to take us forward and take us to another level. And I think that's a fantastic place to be in at this time. So yeah, thank you very much, Kate. Well, maybe not.
No, did you move that then?
Not yet. No. I was just going to make those initial comments because there may be some questions. Are there any questions? Kevin.
26. We have it's about electric buses, and that's obviously growing. So that's supporting this fleet was Dunedin's first electric bus depot located in the harbour. Then you've mentioned the possibility of others. Who owns those?
So the depot in near Halsey Street in the harbour mouth is owned by Ritchie's. The one in Mosgiel that reaching open is owned by GoBus.
So how does that allow for future competition in the marketplace should we retender, or when we retender the contracts at the end of the period?
Because we have competition in Dunedin, we have more than one unit and the opportunity for more than one operator. And ensures that there is a competitive market different to our other market, which we have one operator and moving to one unit.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you for that chance to stop and think whether I ask a question, which will then save the debate. Look, great report, and thank you. And it's good to do some highlights. It is self-congratulatory because it's our own report, and that's not a bad thing. But I'm just reflecting on a previous councillor, Hilary Calvert's suggestion, and one of my highlights that I see of our last training is the liaison committees for the river management area. She had posed the suggestion some time ago for a liaison group of transport users, PT users. Would there be any merit in our reflection, thinking about that as both giving ideas and a way of getting those ideas, but also of getting the feedback of how well things are operating?
In short, yes. So we do that through a number of different fora at the moment. So we have regular meetings with the Disabled Persons Assembly. We meet with community boards sort of on an ad hoc basis. So we could absolutely look at centralising that into one space and place.
And I think it'd be a great thing to do, having seen the feedback on the regional passenger transport. They always have ideas, and legitimising our process to get those ideas regularly to us as users may be a helpful way to consider in the new training. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I'm happy to move. The report is noted.
Scary how
I'm not going to repeat what I just said. Oh, sorry. Alexa.
Oh, I just
Sorry.
trying to find the putting the hand up button, but the screen was full screen, so it wouldn't work. Are we into debate now, or sort of trying to make comments? Can I see moved it.
Yes, we are. I've just moved. I was in the process of moving and I've now got a seconder, Elliot a second. So we're in your hands. We're in debate.
Okay, great. I just wanted to acknowledge a few things. It's great to be looking back, and looking back is always, having some reflective time is always really good. So I thank you for that. But looking back to where we started, there's been a lot of setbacks for what in Queenstown has been a fledgling system. And Dunedin, a very changed one. I mean, the Queenstown one only started in 2018, and it's come a long way. And then in the COVID times, people didn't feel safe on the buses. They were still concerned about catching COVID, and we had to recover from huge COVID impact on passenger numbers and revenues, even dipping into our own revenues to pay for things in one long-term plan. So things have been really, really tricky. And but we seem to have survived all this. Funding's disappeared at times and has come back at other times. It's all been quite tricky. And at the moment, the environment's very difficult. We've had problems with school buses. And where I'm getting to with this is that staff, the team has been amazing. Throughout this entire time, the team has built, become better at what they're doing, and approached problems with enthusiasm and agility, and have dealt with things really well. I want to acknowledge Lorraine Chain and her commitment and constant work dealing with many of these challenges, but really to the entire team with Julian and Jack and Daniel and Grace, and under your leadership, Anita, there's been a lot of willingness and there's been a lot of working through hefty challenges. And I just want to thank everybody for that. And also, as an outgoing person, just to say, crack on, keep it up. You've been a wonderful team to work with, and look forward to seeing what happens. And I will continue to catch buses over the next, hopefully, several years. Thanks.
Thanks, Alexa. Any further speakers? Gretchen.
I was just already had said a lot of thanks, so I'm just reflecting that once again. Have to recognise that there's heaps of positive indices and heaps that has been achieved over this triennium. I guess, yeah, what stands out to me is that it hasn't been ORC on its own, although we have done a lot of work, and I thank the staff for that. We've looked beyond the own walls of our organisation to how we can achieve things as a team and with community, stronger relationships with operators, and what can be achieved when we do that. For example, just one of them is the on-demand service, which we've just talked about. So a willingness to work together as a team in new ways, which is really, really positive to see. Supporting our bus drivers for what they do every single day. That's really important. Lifting wages and basically leading on that when it was really challenging. Once again, haven't had support for infrastructure improvement for bus shelters, but have just prioritised health and safety concerns and invested in it ourselves, once again leading in that space for our communities. And also making changes, as we've noted, progressing particularly Queenstown, but also in Dunedin where we can within the constraints of funding. But I just wanted to recognise as well that I guess more and more we're recognising that infrastructure investments and planning for infrastructure, and buses are part of infrastructure, part of a PT infrastructure for settlements, I suppose, that we are doing that retrospectively, I suppose, as a country when it's too late. So it costs more. We put forward business cases that make sense, and they did not attract the partnership investment that they need. So that happened. We are looking seriously, very seriously, at how we can provide for some of the highest growth areas in the country and inland Otago going forward. because addressing retrospectively simply isn't good enough. We're already at that stage for Queenstown. Wanaka's quickly growing and becoming part of that equation as well, in Cromwell, in parts of central Otago. So that needs to be addressed. And so once again, what I started with on building a team is critical. And that's what we've started this triennium. That is really important because we need to share the facts. We need to share the problem. It's not ours alone. And we all benefit from effective infrastructure and effective public transport. So that's something that we do need to look at. It's regional deals, it's working with councils, it's looking beyond the normal boundaries that we've been working in, which is just the Queenstown and Dunedin, to the settlements beyond that and how they're developing too. So a lot of work to do, but heaps of positivity and setting ourselves up this triennium for the work that we know is ahead of us. So a massive thanks to everyone that's been involved. I've already said thanks to particular people, but once again, reiterate thanks for the leadership of the co-chairs right through to all councillors who've been involved in these committees. This committee, to the territorial authorities who have opened their doors to us coming to visit regularly and having those chats. Awesome. And all the others, particularly staff, operators, community who have been with us on the journey. One more thing though, it's public and active transport, and we can't forget that we've actually got active in there as well, and something to keep our eyes on into the future as well. Sorry, going on, but I forgot to add that bit in there on the retrospective as well, and also not attracting funding for. We do have to put it into our network because reality is it is actually part of it and is actually how people get around. So yeah, that's something else to look for in the future and not lose sight of. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate.
I think it's a wonderful start on recognising some of the highlights in this report. One of the highlights for me, again, in acknowledging what Gretchen just said, was Pim's work on the bus driver wages, which has made a vast improvement and I think set the standard for New Zealand wide. And that's why we picked up so quickly. Wonderful. The active transport is the part that is missing. I acknowledge we put 50,000 into the Dunedin Trails Trust, which is absolutely fantastic. Having sat in Milton last night to everyone claiming the economic development success of cycleways in Clutha, and really recognising that Otago Regional Council were a key part of that in the Beaumont area of the Clutha Gold. We need to start lifting our eyes up to that space and how that interacts with economic development as well, and that part of the mayoral forum, which I think is still needing some work. I want to acknowledge the co-chairs as well, Alexa and Andrew, and in their part on doing this, they've walked the walk and bust the bus, not just talk the talk. And that's been great input into this. And lastly, I want to acknowledge the great staff who've stayed and consistently been there, which has been really fundamental to this, but the excitement of having some new staff in the mix, who've brought some new ways of thinking, and it's been really great input and really good conversations around the table, and challenging our thinking and teaching us about how PT could be working. So thank you to everyone. We've come a long way in the last 3 years. We've even come further in the last 6, but it's a great place to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Kevin.
Yeah, I suppose there should have been another paragraph put into that, and would be Jack's trip to as a highlight trip to Oamaru to meet the locals up there that are pushing for a service, and I know the team is pushing hard for that. So I think that's remiss of you, Jack, not to do that. I need to acknowledge the improvements you have made up into that area, especially if you look at the Warrington Loop, and the increases up towards Palmerston over this triennium have been really well thought of and well patronised, actually. So to get that next step, and if I look at page 65 of this report, which shows me some quite incredible e-stops in Princes Street and Dunedin and Queenstown Airport, and thinking that the ratepayers of the Moreki constituency will be paying probably 20% of the general rate cost of that towards it, and yet they haven't got a bus. So, yeah, look, continue to improve your services because we are seeing better patronage. We'll get the money part right soon, but we need to, and I know you are seriously looking at it, but we need to start delivering for some of these outer reaches, the Wanakas, the North Otago's that actually need services for their vulnerable, for the parts of the community that can't drive. So we need to start making sure that that's a real goal real quick. But well done, keep the good work going. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? If not, I just want to acknowledge and thank all concerned over the last 3 years, but I'm just going to hone in on Kevin's comment about the wider Otago region. And if we just go back and just think about the RPTP process, the 549 people that all submitters that voiced their concerns, and there was I can't tell you what the number is, but there was a large number of people raised the issue about connectivity across Otago, community transport across Otago, and those points were obviously well considered by the committee. And if you look in the document, the aspirations to achieve those sorts of that sort of passenger transport coverage across Otago is there. The aspiration is there. It won't happen overnight, but we're certainly heading in that direction. And I think it's really, really important in acknowledging Kevin's point about the general rate contribution. I think that's a good point, and I think we need to ensure that we continue to tell the story about our aspirations. It's not just something that we've talked about and noted. We've actually put it in a document, a strategic document, a policy that we will get to over time. And like all these improvements, it requires a business case. It requires consulting to ensure that we end up in the right with the right service in various areas of Otago, because it's quite variable in terms of comparing Oamaru and Wanaka, for example. So we will get there, but it will take time, and we need the support of our key partner, which is New Zealand Transport Agency. So they've got their part to play as well to be able to achieve the sort of aspirations that we've got in our plans. So thanks everyone. That concludes this discussion. So I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And that now concludes the this meeting. We look forward to getting together at 1 o'clock. Either Gary or Alan will be chairing that meeting. So we now meeting is closed and